You searched for more. You wanted to become the best version of yourself. Your search is over. And the technology finally exists. To go beyond limits. Your time has come. Unleash your potential. AQ. Adaptive intelligence.
Okay.
I gave Iron Man some more color.
There you go. Now Iron Man's cooler. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start, you guys. So if you can do me a favor, go ahead and mute your mics, mute your videos, and we'll be back for the discussion when I give this signal. But enjoy this week's Throwback Thinking Thursdays. And again, if anybody is online as we stream, if you guys are on YouTube on our live stream or Facebook on our live stream, go ahead and click the description, go into our hub link, and you can find us under our Discord link. So go ahead and do that and join in so you can join in on the discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to have Floor put up the video. And see you guys soon.
Actually, there's one more piece of advice for the newbies over here.
Yeah.
There's going to be a window that pops up that says share screen. You'll have to accept that so you can see the screen. And then you can upload that window and it will become full screen for you.
Yeah, it'll be the watch stream. There it is. Watch stream. Yeah, you just click that.
Click that, and then it will be a small window, and then you can double click it, and it will go to full window.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So thank you everyone for coming today for AQ Adaptive Intelligence's Thinking Thursdays. And today we have a very special guest, as we usually do. And the topic of today is called Energy Enhanced. So today's guest is named Aaron Mccrockman, and he's got very interesting stories and experiences to share with us. Aaron is an energy healer, and he studied Reiki among many other healing techniques, and he's traveled all over the world and shared his wisdom, his knowledge, and his experiences with those he helps. And Aaron is a bit eclectic, much like myself, and he is actually a seeker of shamans, and he's gained lots of wisdom from shamans, in particular in Mexico as well, about healing, about deep spiritual states. And he's here to talk to us today and to share his personal journey and things that have helped him in his life. So like I mentioned, he's an avid adventurer, and he lives in Puerto Morelos and Playa del Carmen, and he's here to share lots of fun adventures and experiences and deep energy healing knowledge with us. And like many of our guests on AQ, he is a fan of puppies, and he's an overall great guy. So if you'll join me in thanking and welcoming Aaron for Energy Enhanced. So thank you for coming, Aaron. How did all your journey, this craziness, how did this all start? You had mentioned to me in private that you were formerly in the military and you had a crazy turn of events that ultimately led to the unfoldment of your personal journey. Can you tell us about that?
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. I joined the military right after 9/11. I was 19 years old, and while I was I ended up fracturing my L3 in my back, my lowest vertebrae. And I also came away with a really bad head injury that had given me a stutter and all kinds of cognitive issues. I couldn't remember things properly. I couldn't speak properly. I couldn't walk properly because of my back. And so it's just a long journey of self-healing is really what started this all for me. And finding a way back to a life that I can enjoy, and eventually finding a place where I could share that knowledge of what I've done for myself with others.
So out of curiosity, you said you had an injury to your lower back. What exactly caused that injury?
So the truck that I was in ran off the road and hit a concrete wall, and there was some stuff in the truck behind me that when I got thrown forward, it landed in the seat behind me, so that when the truck settled back down, it was in my lower back. And I've got a really high tolerance for pain. I was injured often as a child, a very reckless child, playing all kinds of different sports and stuff. So for me, I didn't even realize my back was broken for about 3 days. I walked away from the accident and went back to work for 3 days, but I was really pretty sore, and I was like, wow, if my back's this sore, it's probably something wrong. And I actually went in and the radio tech that did the x-ray, he'd probably been in the military for about 5 months or something. Like, he was very, very young, and he didn't see the fracture. So they sent me to physical therapy, which that actually made me cry tears of pain for the first time since I was like 12 years old. And so I went back to my caretaker and told her, and it was just a cluster of nonsense, and eventually they wrote me up for faking an injury to get out of work. My sister was working for a civilian chiropractor, and he was willing to treat family members for free. And I was in such bad shape that at that point I was actually willing to take handouts, which was something that was preventing me up until that point from getting any help. And he could tell right away he's really good at what he does, and so he wanted to see the x-ray. As soon as he threw it up on his light table, once I brought it back to him, he's like, you clearly see where your L3 was cracked in half. I was like, yeah, I can clearly see that. Why couldn't the radiology tech or my doctor, why did I get written up for faking an injury, get in trouble when it's obvious that there was damage?
Yeah, and yet they get touted as like these, like, oh my God, it's like the doctor's word is God, when really, they're just as fallible as the next guy. They're almost as bad as politicians in some cases.
Some places,
you know? Yeah. So it's good to find people that actually pay attention to details, and that's why I'm a big proponent of seeing lots of healers, and that's why we have like a healing hub for AQ, so that you are able to do that at one of our special healing retreats. And it's also good for the healers because, you know, as healers, we love to give and give and give, but we don't expect to receive much. But the good thing is if you're a healer and you come to one of the events and you host your healing modality, you'll actually get a percentage cut of the event. So you don't have to beg anyone for money. You'll get it for participating.
Oh wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so, and that's the way it should be, you know, because then you get expert views on everything from everyone that is very knowledgeable. But it's not just like medical. It's not really like medical geared. It's more geared to heal you as a person, as an individual, and also to make your neurology be expressed at a higher level, right? So enhanced energy is part of that. So when we were talking privately, you had mentioned that your modality basically allows you to draw in energy from the universe, essentially. You create this electromagnetic field around you, and then you bring that into the person to help them heal whatever's going on. And I'd love to know more about that in the future. But tell us more about, so you had this injury, doctors couldn't figure it out, you started getting some care, and then there was another bad news with time, because, you know, the neurology there is going to get traced to a certain part of your body. You started to get other kinds of like organ failure type stuff. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so basically because I wasn't diagnosed, I was treating my pain with alcohol, and was quite the addict while I was in the military. So by the time I got out, which was before my time was supposed to be up, I couldn't physically perform my duties anymore because my back was so messed up and my brain was so, well, the brain injury didn't happen towards the end, but by the end, between the two, I wasn't able to fulfill my duties, and so they medically separated me, basically. So they
basically fired you?
Yeah, basically.
Wow.
And, so when I was going through the Veteran Affairs hospital treatment to get enrolled after I had gotten processed out of the military, and eventually I gotten up to, I don't know, a little over 200 pounds by the time they kicked me out of the military. And basically, because I wasn't able to do my job, they processed me out. So then I'm getting enrolled in the Veteran Affairs healthcare system because obviously I need a lot of help. And,
right.
so they're doing blood work and everything, and they're really worried about what the blood work is suggesting. So they send me for an ultrasound, and then they diagnosed me with terminal liver disease. Say I got about 4 months to live, and because of how backlogged the system is back then, like, there's a lot of people joined right after 9/11, and a lot of people came back injured from Iraq and Afghanistan. So the VA system was flooded with people, and they didn't ramp up the healthcare, even though they ramped up the military. So I had 4 months until my next appointment, and basically realized that if I wanted to make that appointment, I had to take things into my own hands and not try and wait for somebody to come and help me out. And so that led to me finding a juice fast that my friend had told me to look into a liver detox. She was a nurse at a local hospital, and so Googling liver detox 11 years ago, I came across basically like the Gerson Therapy with Dr. Maxwell Gerson, something along those lines, and I really just kind of winged it, honestly. Like,
can you tell us more about like what that Gerson Therapy entitles?
Yeah, so the Gerson Therapy, if you go to like the Gerson Institute in Tijuana, it's I think 8-ounce glasses of juice a day, fresh vegetable and fruit juices, plus as much raw fruits and vegetables as you can eat, combined with seeing a nutritionist that supplements those juices as well, and coffee enemas. So I abstained from the coffee enemas as well as the nutritionists and supplements, as well as not really, I don't know, I just guessed on how much juice I was drinking. I didn't measure it, and really just kind of figured it out as I was going. I'd never drank fresh juice before, as far as I'm aware. Like, it was just not in my reality. And I grew up really poor, so that kind of stuff was a bit out of our budget, and so it really was a lot of trial and error trying to figure out how to do it. But even with my very, very limited knowledge of coming from a sad diet, not knowing anything, I tried a few different, diets of American varieties that don't really have any benefits in the long term, like Atkins or these fads that were there 15 years ago or whatever. And but so my knowledge of nutrition and diet and everything was just extremely limited, and I still managed to cure my disease and lose 75 pounds in the process of switching from being just fast food junkie to caring about my health and trying to eat properly to provide the nutrition that my body needed to heal itself. And the results were miraculous. When I went back to the doctor 4 months later, she asked, how did I do it? I told her I went vegan, and she plugged her ears and said, la, 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 I don't want to hear that.
Yeah, they always do, don't they?
Yeah.
So you basically had almost liver failure. It was that bad because the pain was so bad. And then their response was, well, we're just gonna see you in 4 months. However, the next appointment wasn't 4 months, so basically like sayonara, good luck dying. So you took matters into your own hands. You then discovered like juicing, eating the way nature intended, with real foods, with real enzymes, real nutrients in them. What was some of the protocol that you used? You said you kind of YOLO'd it, to be honest. It's like, as long as it was like natural, and you said organic too, right? You basically made it into a juice, and you experimented. Obviously you can't make bananas into juice, but you did with certain things. And I'm sure you used other things too. Like, did you use any ginger at all, or anything anti-inflammatory? Anything like? I know you use like citrus though.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Like I really just like the fruits that I was kind of familiar with, that I had before, which was, very limited compared to the amount of fruits I've exposed myself to this point after all this travel I've done. But oranges and apples and then a lot of vegetables. Like carrots and apples were really kind of my staple, because I realized they were kind of the most affordable as far as like cost to juice quantity ratio. So a lot of my juices were apple and carrot based, and then I would just add in some other things for the extra nutrition, like maybe some greens or something that doesn't have a lot of juice but can still, help me find the minerals and stuff that I'm looking for.
Right. So wow, that's pretty minimalist, I would say. That's like about as minimalist as it gets. But you, with that process, you were able to then repair your liver, and then it just set you off on this journey to find more healing. Which that was a similar situation with me, because I had worked in the medical industry for many years, and then basically I just kept seeing death and people getting worse and nothing improving. So then I delved into the research found in fresh plant-based diets, and that was amazing. So I was like, I gotta try it, right? And I'm sure you had a similar experience. But then it's like you reach that next level, and you're like, there's gotta be more that I can do. Like, if I feel this great making this tiny little change, there's gotta be more. So tell us more about some of the changes that you found after that.
Adaptive intelligence. You searched for more. You wanted to become the best version of yourself. Your search is over. And the technology finally exists. To go beyond limits. Your time has come. Unleash your potential. AQ. Adaptive intelligence.
So I definitely agree kind of with what you're saying. For me, it was a bit of, okay, obviously the medical establishment doesn't necessarily know what they're talking about, and maybe some of the things that they've been saying are not legit or more legit than they suggest, right? So understanding that the Gerson Therapy protocol got pushed out of the US because it was too effective by the American Medical Association, and that's why the base is set up in Tijuana. I started kind of questioning, okay, like I remember when I was younger, they said that psychologists were quacks or chiropractors were quacks, or, you know, they're not real doctors. And so I started looking into those things more. And honestly, that was one of the biggest blessings, starting to find some mental health healing, right? Because that was, like, I grew up with this belief set that the psychotherapists are quacks, and they're just gonna, like, you know, diagnose you with stuff to make you think you're crazy, and you know, all this nonsense that I was taught. And that was such a huge part of my healing, being able to not just, like, I mean, they put me in a lot of good therapies, like mindfulness-based meditation, which I recommend for everybody.
Oh yeah,
saved my life in so many ways. But cognitive to behavioral therapy and just different things, but also just like getting my story out and letting somebody hear it, and just the quality of healing that comes just from verbal expression was so massive for me. And that's actually become a big part of how I help people now. It's just like I get real vulnerable and I tell my stories that are embarrassing, but it gives somebody else the space to share their stories and feel comfortable and not judged or whatever. And you know, I just see people's whole energy change and a lightness come over them the first time they share a story that they've never told. And I've been privileged to have that experience on numerous occasions because I create that space for people.
Right. Yeah, that's very important. You need to be able to, like, create a good set and setting, because that's where healing can start. You know, it's like when you plant a seed, you want to make sure that there's good soil. And that's basically the good soil of healing, right? So
for sure.
So you were able to then discover other sorts of modalities, Reiki being one of them, right? Tell us about, like, why you went down that route. Like, what was it about that really, like, sold it for you personally? Because I actually used to be a skeptic of Reiki, and then I actually went to, I was open-minded enough to then actually go and try it out, right? And then actually I went with my dad, which he can talk to us about that at some point later in the discussion. But it was actually a very healing experience for both my dad and I. But going into it completely as a skeptic, and then being transformed with my mindset, because I saw, wow, okay, there is value in this. Can you tell us more about your experience?
Yeah, so it really kind of started with during my juice fast. I also had my exercise that I was doing, because I got a crazy amount of energy that I had to go burn off. And so I had this exercise thing called a trike, TRIKKE. It's kind of like a scooter you push with one foot, except you've got two bars that your feet stand on, and it works with like a snake-like rocking back and forth motion. But it's just an incredible full body exercise, but it also happens to replicate some of the exercises taught in Kundalini yoga. So by putting myself in this state of incredibly high frequency with these juices, and then by doing this exercise that I had no idea what Kundalini or any of this occult stuff was. I was atheist at the time, like I didn't believe in energy. And all of a sudden, like I was divinely connected with God and able to read the Akashic records and just having these massive downloads of information that really opened my mind to a lot of things. So then my friend came and she said she went to this, she goes to this metaphysical church, and that she does this astrology meeting once a month, and she was giving a presentation on astrology and wanted me and another friend to come support her, you know, kind of moral support for her giving this presentation. And so I went, and I was really fascinated by this concept of a metaphysical church. I had no idea what any of that meant, but they had this calendar on the wall with like all of their different events. And so most of it was abbreviations that I had no idea what they stood for. But basically the 2 or 3 that I could understand was like book club and Reiki. So I wrote Reiki down to Google once I got back home. And then once I started Googling, I was like, wow, that sounds incredibly fascinating. And so I just kind of got the courage to go to this church full of crazy witches and mediums and psychics, and it's very intimidating coming from a very strict Southern Baptist Christian background where we were at church 5-6 times a week when I was growing up, to going and being around these people that, you know, from what I was taught were devil worshippers and, you know, just this crazy stuff. But they were the most beautiful people once I got there. And it was hard for me to, like, from what I had read about Reiki, it was hard for me to imagine these people being evil and using this kind of healing energy. So I kind of got some courage and showed up, and for probably the first 3 months I didn't believe it was real. Like I was so skeptical, like this is all fake and I don't feel anything. You guys are all just lunatics, but you're nice, and I've been lonely and super depressed and suicidal, so I enjoy the company. So plus they talked about fascinating stuff like numerology and astrology and mediumship and pendulums and just all these crazy things that I'd never heard of, right? And so for me, I was going there really for the socializing and the learning of these other things they happen to be talking about, but I wasn't really that drawn to the Reiki. It was just a place where I could get other knowledge and meet these really interesting people. But they were really kind to me, and they, I mean, almost every session we did, they would thank me for sharing my energy and tell me that I had a really nice energy that they really appreciated. And so that made me feel good, but you know, I still thought they were just making stuff up, right? And it wasn't until, I guess, about 3 months into it, I started noticing that whenever I was doing this, my palms were getting really sweaty, and I couldn't justify that scientifically for anything other than what they're saying is happening. And if I, you know, consciously stopped channeling, my palms would cool down and stop being sweaty. But if I started consciously channeling this energy, they get hot as fire and start sweating. And so I really started kind of diving more into it. That's probably shortly after that I got my first attunement and started reading the books about it. And, you know, still really skeptical, but something just kind of kept pulling me forward intuitively to keep seeing where that path would go. And I was very fascinated by the concept of the way Jesus is supposed to have healed people in the Bible by touching the people that couldn't walk, and all of a sudden they walked again, right? Like I want to be able to heal people like that, and this seems like way closer to that than what a doctor does. So I just kind of kept following that path and had several different Reiki teachers that taught me different methods, from either tapping into the person's energy and finding out what's wrong with them, or using crystal grid patterns to try and help align their energy, to, chakra based stuff, to energy locks to kind of increase the amount of energy that I can channel and have it flowing at even higher frequencies. So there's all kinds of fascinating knowledge, and some of it, resonated with me and some of it didn't. And that was kind of the way I approach everything on my teachings over the years, is what resonates with me, I incorporate, and what doesn't, I say for people that my techniques don't resonate for, and I offer them, another thing. I'm like, well, if that doesn't work for you, maybe this other thing will. It doesn't work for me, that's why I taught you the other thing. But if it works for you, by all means. And so for me, I really love having a very heavy tool belt full of different skills that I can offer to people. And I kind of use a method where I start at what I deem to be the most powerful through personal experience, and then kind of work my way down the ladder if those aren't working for people for whatever reason. But very rarely have I met people who my first few techniques didn't work for quite powerfully. So
right, yeah, and that's why, again, I advocate, seeing multiple healers at the same time, because imagine what a supercharged state it is to just see one healer. Imagine seeing multiple all at the same time. And that's what we do at our healing retreats and our biohacking retreats. So let me get this straight then. So you started to you doubted at first, you started to go deeper down the rabbit hole of healing, and then you went even deeper to where you would actively seek out shamans even. Tell us more about how that happened, because that's a big step to take, and a lot of people are scared to travel, especially now with all the propaganda and all that stuff going on. What solidified it for you that I have to do this? Like, this is my calling.
I'm not really sure exactly how it happened. I grew up traveling. My dad was in the military, and then I was in the military. So traveling is not as scary for me as other people that haven't had the exposure to it. But I'm also a very capable person and more independent. I mean, I moved out of my parents' house when I was 16. I was homeless for the first time by the time I was 17, and I know how to survive, basically. So for me, it's not as fearful. I know I've been in rough situations and come out on the other side okay. So taking the risk of traveling was a risk that I was willing to take. And actually, the first time I left to go traveling outside of military orders was I went to India to become a monk under the Dalai Lama, was my intention.
Wow.
I ended up changing my mind kind of last minute. Like, I'd shaved my head and beard and everything, and then it's like, maybe not.
What made you change your mind?
A little bit embarrassing, but I had two vices, I guess you would call them, that were really weighing on me, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to give them up. So the first one is cannabis, and that's how I manage my pain as well as my PTSD and anxiety issues and stuff. And it's just like a wonder medicine for me. And so the idea of not having it seemed unnatural, because I feel like it was put here for a reason. It's encoded with our DNA and to react to our cannabinoid system. And so for me, I'm on a very natural path is what I found. I feel like things that are natural, that were put here by the universe, were done for a reason, and they're not accidental. And a lot of that comes from my permaculture studying, right? I work a lot with healing the earth as well as people. And so understanding those natural laws and how nature is just a miracle worker. I mean, if you leave a forest alone, it will do amazing things by itself, right? There's programming in nature that will take us very far if we let it.
Yeah.
And so there was that part, and then there was also sex. I really like women, and they seem to like me a little bit. So I felt like that celibacy thing that monks do was a little extreme, and I wasn't sure. Some kind of intuitively wasn't resonating there with me. And
right.
But while I was there, I was really sick for about 2 months. I had just gotten broken up with by a partner of 5 years. And it made me just really emotionally ill. And so I kept not being able to go see his lectures, which was kind of like a personal requirement I was putting. Like, I need to see this man speak in person and kind of get a chance to look him in the eyes to judge if he's somebody I want to put myself under. And then just time after time, like the days that he was speaking, I would be extra ill. And I was like, what is going on here? So finally, it was probably about the fifth time he gave a speech while I was there after about 2 months. I was in line. I was probably about 110 or something in line with my friend out of about 4,000 people that showed up to see him that morning. The line, I mean, I was standing there for like 2 hours in line waiting. The line finally starts to move, and so does my stomach. And I'm like, oh, this is not happening. I got to go back to my room. But I told my friend, I was like, let me know what he says, you know, give me like a recap. And so I met up with her that afternoon after I was feeling a little bit better. And not prompted by me, she didn't know what my hesitations were at all. These were just her own words, or, you know, the words the universe guided her to use. But she told me, she's like, I don't really remember much, but I remember him saying at one point that he didn't see anything wrong with sitting around with your friends and smoking a joint. I was like, oh, that's very interesting that you would say that. And she said, and the second thing he said that I remember was, that really stood out, was that monks and nuns are an anomaly in nature as the only creatures that don't fornicate. I was like, oh, very interesting. I feel like I've gotten my message. Apparently I'm not supposed to become a monk. Thank you for sharing that. And then she was learning tarot while we were there during that 2 months. I met her before we went to Dharamsala. And so we were both kind of hanging out in Dharamsala for a couple months. She was learning tarot, and I was studying this Tibetan Buddhism and seeing if this was really the path I wanted. And so she wanted to do a reading on me. And the first reading she did on me, she asked me to have a question. But I always approach kind of psychic-based readings with no question. I want the best reading that the universe has to give me. Whatever information is most beneficial to me or mankind, that's what I want. I don't want some petty, like, when am I going to get my next girlfriend or something like that.
Right. When am I going to win the lottery and get that Lambo?
Yeah, exactly. And so she did the reading, and it was just kind of a reflection of how much growth I had achieved at that point and how powerful I was at that point in my life, kind of in a metaphysical sense. And so she said, okay, I want to try a different spread, different card layout. Can you ask a question this time? And I was like, okay, fine. Does the universe, does God want me to go this path of celibacy, or to keep going for relationships with women? And so she starts laying out the cards, and out of 10 cards, 7 of them were women and half of them were naked. I don't have to know how to read tarot to get that message, right? So
yeah, that's pretty obvious.
That kind of redirected my path, and actually right after I made that decision, I took a Tantra teacher training course, and that's actually really defined my path a lot since then. It was a white Tantra, non-sexual, you know, we stayed dressed all the time, but it was really just working with breath work and energy and movement in general, and just taught me a ton about this path, and really kind of laid the building blocks, the groundwork for everything that I've done since then. And that was actually 4 years of my path after having that first Kundalini awakening on the juice fast. For 4 years, I was actively seeking, A, what the heck was that? Because I had no idea. And B, how do I get back there? Because that's the most amazing experience that can possibly be had, and I want more.
So tell us about that. So tell us about that, because that seems like the pivotal moment. What happened during that?
So there's this fascinating concept that I came across at one point called stars. And the idea is that basically one soul is inhabiting a body and lives in that body up until a certain age, and then it leaves to open up the body for another soul to come in who was waiting for that point of life, basically. So I don't know if I believe in that as real or not, but I do know that overnight I changed dramatically. My personality, my eye color. Like, my mom and I have always been very close, and she didn't even recognize me on the phone based on my voice having changed and the words that I was saying being so much different than the ones I had used before. I was very angry and bitter and suicidal, like very depressed, and then all of a sudden the next day I was just like full of love and gratitude, and my eyes went from a dark shade of brown to this hazel kind of greenish lighter color that they are for the most part these days. And yeah, it was just this massive moment. And for me, the best way I can find to describe it is for people who have seen the Matrix movies, where the green lettered coding is floating around. Like basically that's how life looked like for me. I could see the patterns in nature, and like everything just made sense to me. Like I was able to download just huge amounts of information just by looking at things or tuning into a sound of something. It was a very, very intense, mystical experience that even 11 years later, I've still never found anything that comes close to matching the value of that experience.
So it's like for a brief moment, you were able to see a lot more, basically. It's almost like you were able to see through the Matrix, you know, or, you know,
exactly.
the simulation that we all might inhabit, which there's other talks that we've done in the past about simulation theory. So it's funny that you mentioned that, because that theme keeps coming up over and over again. But so yeah, that was such a powerful experience. You were trying to figure out how to get back to that, right? And I've actually done a lot of like healing modalities where it's like that, where you can. Oh, somebody's having fun. I've done a lot of like healing modalities where it's like that, where you see things as they are instead of like, it's very easy to get trapped in your own mind and like see the world through your own mind, but it's different when you can see it beyond yourself. And like that's what those moments are, you know. It's like that divine download. You're seeing everything all at the same time, and then you get it. Like everything makes sense. Everything connects. So you started to pursue shamanism. What was the draw for that?
You know, I would say kind of that Tantra teacher was maybe the first shaman that I kind of found. And so there I was, decided I'm not going to become a monk. And I'm sitting in India without a girlfriend that I'd had for 5 years. When I came there, 3 months into it, she broke up with me. So now I'm feeling incredibly lost. I don't know what I'm doing in life. So I'm journaling a lot, really trying to get my thoughts in order. Eventually I come up with this idea. Let me write down, like, why did I come here? Let me come up with some ideas. Like, what am I here to learn? I understand that most of my life is about learning. So what was it that I wanted to learn when I came here? Like, if I wanted to study under the Dalai Lama, why? What was the goal? So I started writing down topics or subjects of things that I wanted to know. And like 2.5 notebook pages later, I was like, okay, slow down a little bit. Don't be so ambitious. Why don't we just focus on what we want to learn while we're here in India, because it's more culturally or socially available or more cost effective to study it there. You know, some of these things I can go back to the States and learn no problem. But some of these things obviously are going to be more effective for me to try and learn them here in India, because it's where it's from or it's cheaper or whatever the case may be. So I started writing down, I wrote down Tantra, yoga, meditation. And I was like, okay, that is a huge list. Even though it's only 3 words, that could take an entire lifetime to learn any one of those at a master level. Let me stop there. So I'm sitting in this cafe and I'm looking around, and there's different flyers and I don't know, big hanging signs of like this yoga class at this time, this Tantra class at this time, this meditation class at this time. So I start taking all these notes, and I'm going to try and figure out like a schedule of like, okay, I can go Thursday for yoga, I can go Wednesday for meditation, blah, blah, blah. Then this man walks up, and I don't know if I'd ever seen somebody's aura before that, but he just had this crazy, amazing aura. And just this long flowing black hair, just looking like an Indian guru. And he came up and he said, here, I thought you might be interested in this. And he handed me a piece of paper for his class that he was teaching that afternoon. And the words on the paper were Tantra, yoga, meditation.
Wow.
So for me, it's honestly been like a very intuitively guided, like divinely guided thing for me to find these shaman. Wasn't something I was actively doing at first. It's me seeking knowledge, right? As Sagittarius ascendant, I have to be seeking knowledge. I'm not satisfied unless I know everything, and I know that I don't know everything. So right now in my life, I'm very unsatisfied. Like I want to learn more. And so anytime I can find these teachers that have these, you know, this knowledge of subjects that I've never been exposed to, I'm all in. Like I'm so ready to take every bit of knowledge away from them that I can. And So with that guy, it started off, it was just like 4 p.m. classes, 5 days a week. But one day he said that if we had enough, because we had a lot of people that were coming back every day, he said, if there's enough of you interested, I'll offer a teacher training, and we can arrange that. And so there was probably 12 of us that were interested. He only needed a minimum of 8, and so we did a month-long Tantra teacher training where basically everything that he was teaching us on the day-to-day 4 p.m. classes, he taught us from 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. And then we also did the 4 p.m. class. But one of the techniques we were doing was kind of sharing energy with a opposite sex partner. And the idea is that the chakras are sexed, with the root chakra being male and alternating female-male going up. So for example, the heart chakra is female. This is also the third eye is female. So this is why women tend to be more compassionate and kind, but also more intuitive than men. Right? But the throat and the solar plexus, power and kind of dominating through speech, those are masculine traits. Those are masculine chakras. So the idea behind this Tantra technique is that women cannot send to heal somebody from their throat or their solar plexus or their root, and vice versa for men. We can't use our heart to heal people directly. Like the way I do healing, I'm not using my heart energy, I'm using divine energy. It just happens to channel through the heart. But for me to actually try and send from my heart to somebody, the way it was taught is it's not possible. I think it's just not as effective. I think women have a lot more to offer from their hearts than men do, but men can do it. But I don't know that for sure. It's just kind of my own intuition on this. But anyway, so what we were doing is like, I was paired up with a woman. Like all of the women were in a circle facing outwards. All the men were paired up facing them. And we would rotate. So like the first partner, I would send from my throat. She would send from her third eye. We would synchronize our breath, lock eyes, transfer this energy from throat to her throat, up to her third eye, to my third eye, down to my throat, back to her throat. And just, she's sending, more powerful energy from her third eye to mine, which is healing me a lot. But then I'm able to send a powerful throat chakra vibe to her, which is healing her a lot. And then we kept rotating. And by the third or fourth girl that I was paired up with, I was so wide open energetically, and she had never done anything like this. So she didn't really have any reservations. She was very just wide open and open-minded about whatever was going to happen. And it allowed me to fully raise my Kundalini serpent all the way up through my chakras and give me that awakening again.
Oh, really? Wow.
It was kind of funny because at first it's very, very overwhelming in the beginning when you first make that connection again. So I had to go sit down and just kind of play with the energy and let it be. And I didn't realize until afterwards, when the class was over and I was walking her home having a conversation about, she thought she hurt me. And she was really apologizing and scared that she did something bad to me. And I was like, oh, honey, you have no idea. Like, you just gave me the most magical gift that can be given. Like, there is no better gift that anybody could have or has ever given me. And you just taught me the recipe for the meal that I've been looking for the last 4 years. And so basically,
that's pretty powerful. It's like you're amplifying the parts of you that, or actually, you're amplifying the parts of the other person that are lower, and then they're doing the same for you. That's really cool. I like that.
Exactly. I've had a crazy amount of different experiences, trying all kinds of different things, from ayahuasca to riding a motorcycle through the Himalayas to having Kundalini awakenings, and nothing compares. Even ayahuasca, which is intense by a large margin compared to most things, Kundalini blows it out of the water with how powerful it is.
Yeah. Actually, one of my mentors was a chiropractor, and he basically created his own modality called network spinal, and it basically is able to trigger not only like your healing, but also that, and that's why I took a lot of inspiration from that and a bunch of other healing modalities. And because it gives you that moment of clarity where you can really see things as they are, like not worse than they are, not better than they are, but as they are. And you're able to be so present that you're truly living. And you're also, like you said, you're able to tap into something greater, right? And then it's almost like in that moment, you become superhuman, like literally. And, or maybe I should say truly human, because the way most people live nowadays is so far removed from nature that it's like nature is irrecognizable to them.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and it's funny that you say that superhuman, because when I had my first Kundalini awakening, and I told you that my mom didn't recognize me. I mean, this is how crazy I felt. Was I was calling my mom, feeling like I was one of the X-Men, asking her, how long have you known that I was a superhero, and why were you hiding it from me?
Just like what?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I've always been pretty unique.
I should ask my mom that question.
Much,
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Cut you off there.
No, go ahead. It's fine. But yeah, she obviously had a pretty strong reaction to it, and that's why she was like, I don't even recognize who I'm talking to. Like, what happened? Who are you? And that first Kundalini awakening lasted for about a week, and I was connected that strongly for a week solid, and so much downloads of information.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a different modality than most that I've heard of. I definitely want to experience that for myself. That sounds cool, because like I've tried like ayahuasca and done like a bunch of healing modalities, but I've never tried that one. That sounds cool. That method sounds really awesome.
Yeah.
Have you? Oh, go ahead.
For me, I like mixing the Tantra stuff that I've learned with the Kundalini yoga stuff that I've learned. Like, I find them very cohesive. They overlap really well. You know, like the physical body movements that are part of Kundalini, combined with the pranayama that's there in both techniques, and then you add to it this kind of chakra balancing Tantra technique, and man, it's powerful for sure.
Yeah, and I love stacking them too, because like that's like the ultimate biohack, is to get something awesome and then like, okay, this is really awesome, let's put another awesome thing on top and another awesome thing, and then suddenly you have like an awesomeness cake, and it's just like, it's great for your body, your psychology, your healing, and it's better for like everyone around you, because now suddenly you're like this like charismatic superhuman that everybody loves. You're literally like walking around like almost like you're Jesus, like literally, like
yeah, when you're in that state, 100%.
Yeah, and you can literally do miracles in that state, and that's why the world needs more biohacking, because like, I mean, look at how people are living nowadays. They're all in fear, they're all huddled up inside their house, scared of everyone and everything. Like, that's no way to live. Like, that's how depression happened. That's how like suicide or like mass killings or like riots and all this crazy stuff happens, like because they don't know how to go within.
Right.
So when they're presented with an opportunity to go within, they freak out because they've never done it before. So that's why it's good to develop these tools, so that when you do go in, it's not a destructive force, but really a constructive force meant to bring gifts and blessings to the world. And that's where healers come in.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I love most about this technique and the way I teach it and the way I was taught it is that basically you start, it's a chakra cleansing energy exercise, right? Where you start with the heart, and then you use the heart to cleanse your other chakras, because the heart is the seat of compassion and kindness. And so, especially like when you're working with the root chakra, which can be where we hold our sexual trauma, especially somebody's got some deep-rooted trauma from childhood or something. So you start releasing that, and it's not from a place of kindness and compassion. You can hurt yourself by judging yourself. Even though you were a child, you still have these guilty feelings, right? But if you approach it from a place of love and kindness, you can have compassion for that little child that was hurt, and you can start to release that guilt, which is really where the pain comes from, right? So we feel guilty and stuff like that. But once we can let go of those feelings, we can start to open up those blockages in the root chakra, and start to find a different experience in sex and love and different root chakra-based experiences. So
what's really interesting to me is like, having had that medical background, it helped me appreciate anatomy. So like all these like chakras, they're more of like the energy that comes from the neurology of those areas, because every single area that you're talking about with like the sacral or like the enteric nervous system, or like the heart has its own, like the heart is literally half muscle, half neurology. So like all these, and of course the brain, like all these different centers, they all produce their own electromagnetic field. Like even the heart, you can measure that. Like the Heart Math Institute has technology that can measure it from 6 feet away. Even within NeuroHealing, I use a headband that measures your neural activity of your brain. So it measures the electrical activity coming out. And there's And you can actually measure that from a distance. They have machines that literally can measure your brain activity by not even touching you. It's like this thing that hovers around your head but never touches you, and it picks up on those signals. Yeah. So, and that's all coming from the neurology, right? So when you're able to, and they've shown with scientific studies, when you're able to align the brain's brain waves with the heart's waves itself, something special happens. And that's when people go into these spiritual states. So there's a lot of neurology in this. There's a lot of correlates with neurology and then some of the things that you're talking about. When you combine it, you get a full spectrum understanding of it. Versus if you're just stuck in the medical world, or you're just stuck in, like the more esoteric forms of understanding. But when you bring them together, you bridge the gap, you see that the neurology is the link between the physical world and the spiritual world. And I say that a lot because it's true. I mean, like if you do something like ayahuasca, for example, or any kind of psychedelic, it's impacting the neurology, so you're able to reach different states of consciousness.
Sure.
Same thing when you do like these healing modalities, you're actively using the body or your conscious awareness to then change your conscious state. So, but all of that shows a direct reflection in the neurology. So that's why I'm a big proponent of understanding neurology, of applying the principles of neurology, and that ties into everything, even the foods you eat. Like, for example, I was actually talking to Fleur today. The foods that you eat have a direct effect on your neurology, and it causes you to go into different states. So say like if you eat something like the SAD diet, which is the standard American diet, which it will literally make you sad because it impacts your neurology in a negative way. Versus if you eat something that's alive, healthy, gets its direct energy from the sun, and it's like literally, like if you look at an orange, it's like it's trapped light, right? Yeah. That's really what it is. Any kind of plant is trapped light because they went through this whole process of acquiring that energy, transmuting it into this new form, gathering up materials with it, and then bam, now you have your fruit.
Yeah,
but that's a very intelligent process. I mean, that's amazing that it happens. Miraculous if you understand it, like the complexity of that.
Exactly.
So that's why I study these kinds of things, because it helps you. Once you understand what's actually going on, you go, okay, now I know how to biohack, how to get to that state and then reproduce it in others.
Yeah.
So that they can reach their full potential.
Exactly.
So I love what you're telling me, because you're sharing lots of different ways to do that, and there are lots of different ways. I mean, there's meditation is one way, using psychedelic plants is another one, getting neurohealing done. Certain forms of chiropractic will do it. There's like so many things. There's an endless list.
Exactly.
But they're all done separately. They're never combined, right? So if you have these separate, it's like technology, right? If you have like certain technology, it's okay, but when you combine it, you get something new. So say, for example, let me think of an easy example with technology. So like code, like if you, like encryption, for example, and for all the techies, they're gonna love and understand this. But if you just use math, like an algorithm, it's okay on its own, it doesn't do much. But when you pair it to a computer, and then you have a computer running algorithms, then you can develop even more complex ones, and now you have AI. You have code that can learn itself. Like, that's amazing. Like, that's an emergent property, right? And that's what I love. Like, life has a lot of these, like life itself, living things have a lot of emergent properties, and they keep stacking on top of each other into this amazing web of novelty, right? It's like nature itself creates. It's like an engine for like new things.
Yes, exactly.
So when we understand those processes, we can help it happen even faster. And we live in a world where we need it to happen faster. Exactly, because, more things are going on. There's a lot of destruction. But we can sit here and blame everyone else, but that never changes anything. Like, even Gandhi says, be the change you wish to see.
Yeah, exactly.
What does that mean? He was a big proponent of meditation, of fasting, and those are forms of biohacking. That's how he did it. He literally had to biohack. He had to use his consciousness to overcome these biological things and then integrate them to achieve the end that he saw, which was peace in India, and liberty in India. And then with him being the icon, like the leader, he was able to achieve that.
Right.
but it all started with biohacking, right?
Yeah.
So it goes beyond just ourselves. So tell us more about what's your vision of your future? What would you like to bring to people in the world? What are your goals for healing now?
It's interesting because I don't have goals kind of intentionally. So my whole plan with coming down here to Puerto Morelos was that I saw there was some cool stuff going on down here, and I wanted to be a part of it and come support it. So I came here with the agreement with the universe that I have a very wide-ranging skill set, both energetically as well as physically. I can rebuild car motors, I can do plumbing, electrician, all kinds of stuff, right? So
that's cool.
My main thing is kind of landscape architecture, landscape design. So I came down here to really do some of that permaculture stuff. But I live with this agreement with the universe that I want to be of service in whatever way best creates the best universal outcome. And so whenever somebody comes to me with a problem, I don't hesitate. Like if somebody asks me to help them, that's the universe bringing me a problem to solve. So my goal, I guess, would be to just hopefully find a way to keep this mindset, because honestly, like the ability to help people without a structured concept in front of me has actually been miraculous in comparison. So also the benefits, like the blessings that I've returned for following this path far outweigh anything I've ever done with a more structured schedule on what I want to be doing or where I want to be going. And I feel like if I keep following this path, my intuition will just keep guiding me to wherever it is that I want to be. I mean, I have some ideas on some intuitively guided long-term goals on what I'm working towards. But basically a lot of it just revolves around getting a cohesive, kind of comprehensive version of this knowledge out to the masses. And so working with people like this in this group and getting an understanding of all of these different modalities and kind of having a coming together of knowledge, kind of like I grew up with book-bound encyclopedias, right? Like those encyclopedias to cover all of these other topics as well. Like you should be able to go and read and get a good understanding of what Reiki is, of what yoga is, of what meditation is, from an easily accessible source, from knowledgeable, creditable, practitioners, and eventually we're talking about building an academy here to teach this stuff. And we're not talking about, we're actively in the process of building something like this, and so also a healing center. So for me, I think part of my path that it's not necessarily my plan, but what I kind of foresee happening is I'm going to go through this process of designing this property and helping to create these projects here. So we've got an academy, a healing center, and like a art theater kind of place where artists can come and just create amazing art. But I think that at the end of having all of those come together and this place is functioning enough and where it's going, then my job is kind of going to be project manager, moving somewhere else and starting another project just like it, as well as probably tapping into the local knowledge that's there for, like, I'm here working on these projects, but I'm also living with a Mayan shaman and learning about the medicinal herbs that he uses and the different active pressure techniques and stuff that he's using. And so just sharing knowledge with him, even at a kind of teacher to teacher level, is just part of that experience. And, if I wasn't following my intuition, I don't know that I would have been guided to have that. And so for me, goals is just kind of something I left behind a while ago, and I just kind of go with the flow and let it take me wherever I'm supposed to be, to where I can be of best service or learn what I'm supposed to know for being of service later in my life or whatever.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing, brother. So thank you guys for that. But is there anything you'd like to say before we open up to Q&A?
Just a lot of expression of gratitude to everybody coming together like this, and this whole concept of healers coming together, supporting each other and sharing knowledge is just a powerful concept that really resonates with me. And I look forward to kind of being more a part of this in the future is all I have to say.
Yes, that's going to be a fun ride for sure. Thank you so much. So everyone, if you guys want, you can go ahead and turn your videos back on, and you can unmute yourselves, and let's go ahead and ask Aaron some of the questions that you guys have. I'm sure you're dying to ask. All right. So unfortunately, Aaron's not here, obviously, but we're here. And so if you guys are watching on YouTube and on Facebook Live, feel free to come in and join us. We're going to go ahead and mosey over into our private discussion. But if you guys are online and you want to check it out, go ahead and click on the description and find us on Discord. And you can find it through our hub link through there. Just scroll down until you see Discord and just click into that and it'll let you join. All right, so we're going to go ahead and transition into private discussion. So what was something new that you